So to show you how the drop method works, I have a demo data frame here that has four columns, and some of them have with null values. Now let's say you have to use the drop method to remove null from this data frame. The drop method has a default this is the default option of the drop method, and it's the same as the drop with a parameter, with any parameter. So what this method does is that it removes all rows that contains a column with null values. So in our case, here is a null value, so this row will disappear if we apply the drop method to it. Also, this one will also disappear, and this one. So the resulting data frame will only consist of two of this row and this row. So this is what the drop method does. It removes all columns with a null, also all rows that contains null values in any columns. So let's see how this looks like in Visual Studio. So this means let's create let's also do the following. We will say var dropped any, let's call it dropped any equal row customer list data frame and our functions, and we'll apply the drop method to it. There we go. So in our case, the drop any data frame will not have any column with null values. So let's take a look here. So here you have the definition of the drop method, and it says it returns a new data frame that drops rows containing any null or NaN values. There's also an overload that takes in a string parameter called how, and yes, it states the how parameter determines the behavior of dropping rows. So if how is any, then drop rows containing any null or NaN values. So this is the same as the default one, so as the drop without any parameter. To show you how this looks like, so this means let's call here drop default and create another one called dropped any equal row customer dot na dot dropped any, and next we can see here that, but then there's also one called, so the parameter how can have one of two value, either any or all. For any, we already saw how this works. Now for all, let's see how this works for the parameter all. So now we are back in our data frame illustration, and let's go back here. The all parameter drops only rows that contains only null values. So in our case, the only rows where all columns are null. In that case, there's only one, and it's this row here. So if we use the drop method on this data frame, it will delete only only this row will be removed. All the other rows will remain. So this row, this row, this row, and this row will be in our result data set. So with the drop all method, we really remove only rows that really corrupt on all columns. So let's switch back to Visual Studio. So here is state if how is all, then drop rows only if every column is null or NaN for that row. And this is what we have here. It will only drop rows where every column is null or none. So in our case, this will stay. So if you call the drop method using the all argument, it will only drop this row. If you call it using with no argument or with any, then it will drop all rows that contains null or NaN values. So let's apply this back to our data frame. So let's create another one here called drop all equal row customer list NA dot dropped and say any. And now let us take a look into how many rows are dropped with every call of the drop method. Let's do some console write line here, console dot write line, and then we'll say drop number of rows, and then we say dropped default dot count. So then we can then see how many rows we have in there. We do the same for the other three. This one is dropped with the parameter any. This one is dropped with the parameter or. This is any. This should be all. And then we call this one dropped any and dropped all. We also need one last. The first one shall be the row customer list dot count. So the count method returns the number of rows in a data frame. By writing this to the output, we can see how many rows are dropped each time when we apply any of the drop method overload. So let us run this quickly. Let's build it first. I hope there is no error here. Drop default, dropped any, dropped all, and then let's call this with null values. Let's build it again. Okay. Let us run it. So now it's done, but there's something wrong here because we can see that it's saying nothing has been dropped. What can be the reason? Don't like that. Let's take a short look into the file. So let me check here. Repos, sources, data, output, the contact list. This is the wrong file. Output contact list. Okay, I can see what is happening. So in this file, we specified that Apache Spark should represent empty value with the string null. So from the point of view of Apache Spark, there's zero null value in this file, which is not true. So this is the result of the following operation we did previously. Let me show you. Previously we said that by writing the file, please represent null values using the null string. So in our CSV file, technically there is no null value. If we didn't use this option, then we will have empty fields instead of null, and then Apache Spark will understand that these columns have null value in it, but we didn't do that. So now we need a way to tell Apache Spark how null values are represented in our file, and there's an option for that. So the option is null value, and then we said this is it. So we are using these options to read our CSV file. So what is happening here, we will tell Apache Spark that in the file we are reading, null values are represented with the string null. This could be anything you decided previously while creating your file. You should also do one thing here, at least it's safer than nothing. Infer schema, and we said okay, true. Let us build that again and run it. Okay, now it ran perfectly. We can see that with all null values still in the file, we have around 100,000 rows. When we use the drop method, the result, let me pin this, okay. So when we use the drop or the any method, the resulting rows number are the same, and if you use the drop all method, it apparently there's only one row in the data set that has null on all in all columns. So we can verify this by switching back to our file. Let's put a filter there. Let's filter this and then set yarn null. Now let's pick, there's already null there. Let's also pick here null. Null. Okay, still that much row. Only null. Where is that row? Null, null, null. Let's put a null here also. Filter. Zack, zack, zack. Where is that row? There's one row here with only nulls. Let's just keep filtering. Null. And also null. Okay, this is the rows. There's only one row in the whole data set that has null in all columns, and that's why after applying drop all, we only have one row. There's only one row dropped from the initial data frame. So the requirement was to create a data frame where there is no null values anymore. So we can now quickly do that by now we know what we need to do. We will create a new let's call it cleaned customer list equal row customer list dot dropped dot na dot dropped, and that's it, because this will remove all rows that have any null value in them in any column. We can also just explicitly state it here like any, and then we will have it there. So now we have to save this file. Do it by clean customer list dot write dot, you want to write a CSV file, and let's use the same path we used previously. Here. And specify the options dot option. We want the header to be present in the file. What else? Because there is no null value anymore in this file, there's no reason to specify how null value should be handled while the data is written to disk. But there's one thing we have to do. The mode will be, let's just overwrite it just in case it's there, and then we will call it output clean customer list clean contact list dot CSV, and of course we don't need that more. This was just for illustration. Let's save this. Okay, everything is saved. We read the file here, we remove everything here, and then here we write it back to disk. So this should work fine. Build and run. Cool. Looks like there were no error. So let's go back here. So clean contact list.csv. This is what we created. This is our file. How many records? 88,303, because of course the header is not a valid record, and this should be the same as we had here.